All right, so I wanted to go through the review sheet with you guys just to talk through each and every problem. So let's start at the beginning. The first 4 problems, you're going to be simplifying. Okay, so problems 1 through 4, I don't know why that changed colors. You're going to simplify. So remember, you want to look for the largest perfect square that will go into the radicand. Okay, the radicand being the number that's under the radical. Okay, so on the first one, and if you need a list of your perfect squares, they're in your composition book. I'm not sure of the page, but they're there. And then, of course, on your quiz tomorrow, you'll have them on the board. But for number 1, we have the number 48. I know that 4 is a perfect square that goes into 48, but that's not the largest one. The largest one is 16. So using my calculator, I figure out that 16 times 3 is 48. Once we've done that, then we're going to take the square root of the perfect square. So the square root of 16 is 4. I'm going to write that out front. And then the number that's not the perfect square is going to stay under the radical. So for number 1, our answer is 4 square roots of 3. On your quiz, it's going to look just like this. And so I do want you to write your answers over to the right for me. It'll make it easy for me to find your answers and check those. All right, the next one, 294. It's a large number. On your quiz tomorrow, number 1's going to be a smallish number, like 48. But number 2 is going to be a larger number. And so I don't know that I quite recall what goes into 294. So I'm going to try several. 36 doesn't work. I'm going to try 49. Actually, 49 works. Okay. So the largest perfect square that will go into 294 is 49. And using my calculator, I figured out that 49 times 6 is 294. So with that done, I'm going to take the square root of 49, which is 7. And then the square root of 6 is not a perfect square, so we're going to keep that. So, yeah, the emergency drill's happening now, but I'm on planning, so I'm not going to go. All right. So that's how you do the simplifying. All right. The next 2 questions, number 3 and number 4, going to be similar on your quiz. This time we're going to do the same thing, but don't forget that we've got a number out front. It happens to be 2 on both of these, but there's a number out front. So we will bring that into our answer towards the end, okay? So I'm going to look at the square root of 32. 4 times 8 is 32, but there's a larger perfect square that's going to work. It's going to be 16 times 2, 16 being the perfect square, right? Then once I figured that out, I keep my 2 there. The square root of 16 is 4. So I'm going to write the 4 on the outside, and then it stays right there. And then the 2 is going to be on the inside because it's not a perfect square. It's got to stay under the radical. And then my last step is, because I have the 2 that I started out with in the front right here, I'm going to have to multiply the 2 times the 4 that's now in front. So that's going to be 8 square roots of 2. 8 square roots of 2 for that answer. All right, number 4. Okay, very similar to number 3. I've got my 2 out there. I'm going to let it hang out there for a minute. I look at 150, and anything like 50 that ends in 50 or 25 or 75, you're going to use 25 as your perfect square. Okay, so 25 times what equals 150? I can use my calculator to figure out that 25 times 6 is 150. So let's put my 2 there for a minute. Let's find the square root of 25, that's 5. The square root of 6, not a perfect square, so it's going to stay in there. And then the last step, go ahead and multiply those two numbers. 2 times 5 is 10. And then your square root of 6 will stay there. It'll be the same. All right. Number 5 and 6, we have multiplication. Okay? So here's what I want you to do. First, I want you to multiply. Okay, remember outside numbers stay outside, inside numbers stay inside. I'll show you that in just a minute. Multiply, and then we need to simplify. Simplify the square root just like we did in problems 1 through 4. Okay, so let's do number 5. On number 5, I don't have any numbers in the front of the radicals, so I'm just going to multiply what's under the radical. And what's under the radical is going to stay there. When I multiply 12 times 6, 12 times 6 is 72. So square root of 12 times square root of 6 equals square root of 72. And then I'm going to go through my simplifying process. So I've got to think, okay, well, what is the largest perfect square that goes into 72? And there's quite a few. 4 does, 9 does, 16 even might go into there. I think it does. But the largest one is going to be 36. Okay, so 36 times 2 is 72. I'm going to take the square root of 36, write that outside. So square root of 36 is 6. The one that's not the perfect square will stay under the radical, and that's my answer. Okay, number 6. On number 6, I have 2 radicals to multiply. They do have numbers in front of the radicals, so I'm going to multiply those first. So I'm going to do 4 times 6 is 24. And then 14 times 8. Okay, so multiply these two. 14 times 8. I need my calculator for that one, y'all. That's going to be 112. Okay. So, I'm not done because I need to simplify. I'll have my 24 here, and then I need to think, okay, and this one's a toughie. What is the largest perfect square that goes into 112? And I tried several. Oops. 4 works, 9 doesn't work. But when I came around to it, the one that was the largest was 16.
First floor, please move to
So 16 times 7 is 112, okay? So once I have that done, don't forget your 24 is out front. The square root of 16 is 4. And then the 7, it's not a perfect square, so it's going to stay underneath there. And for my final answer, I've got to multiply 24 times 4. And that is 96. So 96 will be on the outside, 7 on the inside. So my answer is 96 square roots of 7. Okay. The last 4 have to do with division or with fractions. And so we talked about a few things today that I want to remind you of. Okay. I would love to change colors here. Let's change colors. Okay, so here's the things I want you to think about. Number 1, look for perfect squares. Okay. If there are perfect squares, then we can go ahead and take the square root of that, and that can help us. Okay. Secondly, look at the numbers in your fraction and think, can you simplify the outside numbers? Okay, just like simplifying fractions. Can we simplify the outside numbers? Okay, and then number 3, raise that up a little bit. Can you simplify the inside numbers? And the inside numbers, I got to jump down here. The inside numbers, I'm going to put numbers like that. That's the radicand. Okay, remember the number under the radical. We've been calling them inside numbers because y'all know what I'm talking about. All right, so let's use these steps. Kind of keep that right there. Let's use these steps as we do these problems. Okay, so on the first one, I'm going to get that to go away. On the first one, I have 72 over 8. I do not see, if I use my step 1, I don't see any perfect squares. Okay, so no perfect squares there. And then step 2, can you simplify outside numbers? There's no outside numbers. Okay, there are some in number 9. You see these, but there's not any in number 7. Okay, but number 3, we are going to be able to do, okay? So in number 3, I have 72 over 8. Can I simplify that? Well, let me see. I can divide 72. 72 divided by 8 is 9. Okay, so if we're dividing a radical by a radical, we can do that. And our answer, though, will stay under the radical. Okay, so square root of 72 over 8 equals the same thing as square root of 9. And you guys should know that the square root of 9, that's a perfect square, is just 3. Okay. Number 8. Let's go to number 8. Number 8, right here.
All clear.
It says look for perfect squares. And I see perfect squares. So I can just take the square root of the top. The square root of 9 is 3. And the square root of 49 is 7. And that's all you have to do. You're done with that problem. Okay, square root of 3 over 7. Or, no, I'm sorry, just 3 over 7. Okay, once you take the square root, the radical's gone there. Okay, number 9, look for perfect squares. Again, I'm doing my steps. Look for perfect squares. I don't see any. Can I simplify the outside numbers? 25 over 4 won't simplify. Okay. Step 3, can I simplify the inside numbers? Well, actually, I can. Because, okay, so 25 over 4, I can't simplify. But 24 divided by 2 is just 12. Okay, so I can do that. Now, when I get to this, you'd say, oh, we're done. Well, we're not quite done. We got to simplify this, okay? We've got to simplify the square root of 12. So let me come down here. I still have my 25 over 4, okay? So keep that there. For square root of 12, what goes into 12? Well, 4. 4 times 3 is 12, okay? When I take the square root of 4, let's see. When I take the square root of 4, that is, the square root of 4 right here is 2. And then the square root of 3 stays in there. All right. Just simplifying the square root of 12 there. Okay, now finishing it up. 25 times 2 is 50. Got my square root of 3 stays there, and 4 will go there. But one more step, and you can use your fraction button on your calculator. 50 over 4 simplifies to 25 over 2. Okay, so the outside numbers, going back to this step right here, the outside numbers, I can simplify that. Okay, so students are going to be coming in, so y'all just ignore the noise for a minute, okay? It's third period coming in. Okay, number 10, I look for perfect squares. I don't have any. I can't simplify the up front numbers. Can't do that. There's only a radicand in the bottom, so I can't simplify anything there. So this time I'm going to have to do the steps for rationalizing the denominator. So you multiply the top and the bottom by the radical that was in the bottom. So I'm going to do square root of 7 over square root of 7. On the top, I'm going to have 3 times square root of 7, just like that. On the bottom, I have my 2, okay, the 2 from right here, but then the square root of 7 times the square root of 7 is just 7. So we'll have 3 square roots of 7 and multiply those and you'll get 14. So those last 2 answers.